But friends, when I was young, there's a period of my childhood where we grew up out in the country. Did anyone have a similar childhood like that? Grew up out in the country a little bit. It wasn't until my teen years, I was about 11 or 12, where we moved closer into the city. And so for a good chunk of years, lived out in the country. And that was in an era, right, where to get on the computer, to use the internet, there was this giant loud screeching sound, right, that you would hear, right, when dial-up would try to connect to the World Wide Web. And we didn't grow up with, Xboxes or PlayStations. Our friends had those. We didn't have anything like that. And so we had to use our imagination. And so I remember one year, my brothers and I, we had gotten some bikes, and we were excited, and we'd ride them all around our property and all around the home. And I remember we had the idea, let's build a ramp, right? Did anyone do that, right? As a kid, build a ramp to jump your bike off, right? And so we grabbed some blocks, that's right. We grabbed some blocks, and we put it in the gravel driveway. We had it all kind of built up. And we found a board, right? This rickety old board, and laid it on there. And I remember our older brother, he is 5 years older than me. And so he would have been maybe around, maybe 10, 11, maybe 12 at the time. And I would have been around maybe 6, 7, 8. And anyway, so I remember, he went first, and he went off this ramp, and it was exciting, and he was just flying down the driveway. I mean, you could see the gravel just kicking out from behind his bike, and he would go soaring off this ramp, and I'm like, all right, it's my turn. And so I jump on my bike, and I have my helmet strapped, all that stuff, and I'd be a little nervous, right? I wasn't as old as him. I was a little terrified, but hey, I could do this, right? And so I just put my foot on the pedal and start to move him around and around and around, and there I'd go right off the ramp. It would go around and around, and just, we had a circle driveway, so one would go off, and we'd circle around, the other one would jump, and then after several times, we then looked at our younger brother, who was about 2 years younger than me, so he would have been maybe 5 or 6 at the time. I think around 6 for this particular memory. And I'm like, all right, come on, it's your turn. So he got on his bike, and as brothers, right, there's that wonderful peer pressure of, don't be a wimp and those types of things that you'd say to each other, all those not very nice things, right, that we regrettably said to each other as brothers. And so finally, he's like, all right, I'll do it. And so he started pedaling. He wasn't moving very fast. He wasn't going very quick. And the wheel was going like this a little bit. We're like, all right, Derek, pedal a little bit faster. And so he'd go a little bit faster, but he was still not very sure of himself. And you see, we were just kids. We weren't engineers at all. And sure enough, when his bike hit the board, all the blocks tumbled out, and so did he, right off of his bike. And gravel and rocks, everything from the driveway in his hands and in his knees and elbows, all that gross stuff, right? Oh, but I remember him standing up and Mom running out of the house, and she'd grab him, all right, it's okay, I'll get cleaned off. And she'd say to him, she said this to a lot of us very often. She said, it's going to be okay. She would say something to the effect of it's going to be okay. This is going to make you a little bit tougher. Right? Being a mom of 3 boys that were wild and crazy, who climbed trees and would jump out because they think they were superhero, Superman, all that stuff, right? She'd say, don't worry, this is going to make you a little bit tougher. This will make you a little bit stronger. Don't worry, right? To kind of affirm us. And I don't know if maybe your parent or your grandparent have kind of a phrase like that they would repeat to you. But it's interesting that, through our years in our culture, our world around us, we have sayings that are like that, right? There's the great philosopher and songwriter Kelly Clarkson, who writes the lyric, right, that, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you what? Stronger, right? My personal childhood hero, Sylvester Stallone and Rocky Balboa, right? Come on, right? He would say, listen, it doesn't matter how hard you can hit. It matters how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's how winners are made. We had these sayings, these phrases, these slogans that we would throw all around, and we hear throughout all of our years growing up, and even into our young adulthood, into our life. But I wonder if there's a little bit of danger. I wonder if there's an ounce of some of that we're really not experiencing. I wonder if there are actually a lot of things that we walk through in life that don't make us stronger. Because we're kind of experiencing that. We have a friend who betrays us. And it doesn't make us really quick to go out and trust another person. No, it makes us more hesitant to trust someone else. Someone we love lies to us. And so we lose confidence in ourselves. We don't all of a sudden become more confident or more believing. No, we second guess, we become more skeptical. We have passion or excitement for a new job, but then the boss isn't who we thought, or some things happen, and so all of that passion is not set more ablaze, but it is quickly stomped out. We run into difficulties in our marriage or dating relationships or with our kids, and oftentimes it doesn't really push us to become better, right? Or stronger or greater in that kind of role, but it actually kind of oftentimes we settle and we just kind of cruise through those seasons. And so I guess in some way you could say hardship is making us tougher, but not in the way that we mean it by. It's making us more calloused. It's desensitizing us to our humanness and to our emotions. And so we become people who hide what we feel. We become people who try to guard ourselves against being hurt again. And so this reality, if you watch, these generational shifts over the last century, you'll notice within the last 40 to 50 years, this powerful shift, this awakening and this realization of this reality and how it has already began in some monumental ways to shift the way that we live as human beings, especially in this culture, in this country. We've become individuals who highly value happiness and we highly value pleasure because we understand the reality that hardship comes and it's likely going to crumble us like rocks, so we might as well enjoy the moments that we can. And so we justify behavior by what? Saying it just makes me happy. Oh, that just makes me happy. We pursue ideas or lifestyles or identities, whatever it is, all for the reason that it would make us happy. And we've even allowed this really interesting, this new emergence of a parenting style. In the last 20 years, the last 2 decades, we've seen a whole new parenting style emerge that is quite normal. We've all heard of the term the helicopter parent, right? Who's always around their parent trying to keep them safe, all those things. We've heard of that term, but in the last 20 years, this new idea has emerged to become lawnmower parents, which I'll say I'm not a huge fan because it doesn't really sound all that interesting. But this lawnmower parent, someone who goes ahead of their child and cuts down anything that would stand in their path to make it smooth, easy, and comfortable and as happy and as fun as possible. And so as parents, we feel like we're doing a bad job if we see our child who's sad or if they're unhappy. We feel like we're failing if they're uncomfortable with something. And because of this, in the last 40 to 50 years, this major shift in our culture and the way that we view the world. And as a reality, listen, this is the point I'm trying to get to, is that as a reality of all of these things, we become very quickly to give up and to quit. We become people who very quickly will quit a job if we're unhappy or if we don't like it. We're people who very quickly will walk away from a friendship or a relationship if it's not making us happy or making us feel satisfied at the end of the day. We're very quickly willing to throw in the towel on all sorts of things. You name it. And what we're failing to realize is that this is eroding us in so many ways. This is dissolving so much of what actually God is trying to do within us and what he is trying to do through us. There's this powerful moment in the Bible, and maybe you know it. In Genesis chapter 25, there's this moment where these 2 brothers who've been fighting their entire life have a moment where one takes advantage of the other. If you want to grab your Bible and open up to it, as also, of course, will be here on the screen. With these 2 brothers named Jacob and Esau. Their father was Isaac, and Isaac's dad was Abraham, and so kind of following the lineage, right? And then Jacob is the father of Joseph, right? And so kind of following the story of the Bible a little bit. But here in this moment, perhaps maybe as teenagers or young adults, there's this moment where Esau, the older brother, who has a great privilege and a great honor as the older brother to one day assume authority and assume leadership of their family and their tribe. One day when Isaac passes away, Esau will kind of take the reins as the leader of their people. But his entire life, Jacob was jealous. So there's this moment in verse 29, we'll read it together. It says, once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, quick, let me have some of that red stew. I am famished. And that is why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, first sell me your birthright. That is that privilege I just talked about. Look, I'm about to die, Esau said. What good is a birthright to me? But Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. And so pause there for a moment in this story. He comes in famished. He comes in starving. And his stomach is making that rumbling noise, like, telling you that it's hungry, that it is starving, right? He is to that point where if he does not eat or consume anything, he believes he's going to die. He's so hungry, but he's not going to die. But his stomach is controlling his body, no longer his mind. His stomach is telling him what he really needs in this world and what he really needs and what his priorities are. So Jacob sees this opportunity. He says, listen, how about you sell me some of that birthright and that stew that you're smelling? I remember being a kid and going into grandma's house and smelling freshly baked bread. Anyone have a memory like that? Going in and smelling this stew, and he says, I'll give you some of this. You just got to give me your birthright. And he takes the deal. And then it says this. It says, then Jacob gave some bread and some lentil stew, and he ate and drank and then got up and he left. And it says this is so important. So Esau despised his birthright. He despised it. He thought it was worthless to him now. That a bowl of soup was worth more than this, and he was so quick just to give it up. And it says that he despised. I bet you if you were to back up in time and were to ask him in that moment, do you think your birthright is worthless? He would never say that. But because he was so quick just to give it up, God tells us, listen, in his heart, it was worthless to him. There's this deep reality that I hope we're beginning to realize this morning, is that when we are so quick to race to the solution of just giving up, we're communicating to God, to ourselves, and the people around us, then whatever that is that we're trying to give up on is just worthless to us. That we despise it. And we especially, as people who are following Jesus, that means we especially despise the work that God is trying to do within us and what he's trying to do through us. I've already said that, but I really hope that is the phrase that we take home today. This reality that in James chapter 1, there's this very odd statement that is made. Maybe you've read this before, maybe you've heard it. I have preached on it many times because this is a couple of verses that for years has been just an anchor that I have clung to remind me of what God is trying to do when life is not so easy. It says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. I want to read this again because it is so foreign to us. Consider it pure joy. Not, a little bit of joy. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. The ones that are hard at times to get out of bed to face. The ones that keep us awake at night. When we face trials of many kinds, because you know that it is in the testing of your faith that perseverance is produced. It produces perseverance. And so let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. This reality that God is calling us in seasons when life is not easy, when life is a struggle, when it is a fight, and we are so feeling like we just want to throw in the towel and give up and walk away, right? That it is in those moments that God is wanting to do a deep, profound work within our soul, that he's trying to do something within us, and he's especially wanting to do something through us. And we are missing this reality that is in seasons of crisis and chaos and conflict, when we're in isolation. That we are in a moment where we are broken before God. And we're saying, God, I don't know what to do. I need your help. I don't know what to do. I am lost. I'm confused. I don't know where to go next. And it's in those moments where we are ready to finally receive and be taught a lesson or a value or a principle of life from God. And we don't like the waiting. We don't like the tension we feel. But it's in those moments where God is trying to shape us. He's trying to make us more like him. The way that we interact with our relationships, what it means to really love unconditionally, what it means to serve, what it means to be a blessing, what it means to all of those things, what it means to parent, all of those values. I mean, you bring this across every aspect of your life. And when life is not easy, is in those moments where God can grab a hold of us. And for years in our discipleship, for years in our following of Jesus, we believed this lie. One of my favorite authors, his name is Dallas Willard. I call him a modern day American C.S. Lewis, okay? I don't know if he gets that title from anyone else, but he gets that title from me. And he writes all sorts of books, incredible, profound teachings of our faith, what it means to follow Jesus. One of my favorite books that he writes is called The Great Omission. If you're looking for a great book, read this one, The Great Omission. And he says that we have greatly omitted perseverance. We have greatly omitted what God is trying to teach us in seasons of hardship. Because Jesus never said that life would be easy. He never said that life was going to be a cakewalk, but he did say that as a follower of him, that he would bring a wholeness to our soul and to our being, and that when we leave this earth, we would be in eternity with him. He never promised us all of these profound favors and these blessings, that we'd be super wealthy, that every wish of our heart that would give us all the things of the world would be granted to us. He never promised any of that stuff. When we look at the life of the disciples, we read that they were hated, they were ridiculed, all of these things. That's why he said that blessed are those who are persecuted. I mean, Jesus said that. There's this reality that God is looking to bring about us into maturity in our soul, and we missed it, which is why for so many years we walk around as people following Jesus, and we walk into seasons of hardship, and there's no stability within us. There's no peace. There's no joy. There's nothing. There's no matureness of character that comes from Christ, that he is trying to form within us, that he can only form in seasons of hardship. And we're like taking an axe and we're cutting off the possibility of him growing anything within us. We're closing the door. We're slamming it in his face because we're so quick to give up and to walk away. We're so quick to say, you know what, I'm done reading my Bible. I'm done praying, because I don't see anything coming from that. I don't hear God talking to me. I don't hear nothing. And so I'm just going to kind of do my own thing over here. You know, I go to church, but really, like, God isn't helping me at all. He's not really doing anything. He's not fixing my kids or fixing this problem in my life. So I'm just going to keep on going back to doing things my way and how I want to do it. And so often we shut the door so early and we miss out on the growth that God is trying to do within us, the matureness of our soul. The matureness of our soul. And so I urge us, friends, as people following Jesus and hungry for him in seasons that are really uncomfortable. The seasons are like, I can't wait until this is over. I can't wait until this is behind me. Oh my goodness, I just need this to be done. In those kind of days are when God grows us the most. Not when life is good, but when life is bad. I urge us to grab a hold of that reality. And the other reality, listen, this is so good. This is so important. Because this entire series has been about us wanting to be used by God. Right, church? Right? Amen? Come on. I'm not the only one here. Amen, right? This whole series is that we want to be people who are usable by God. Usable by God. We often think God's not going to use me because we leave ourselves unusable, inaccessible to God. We say, I'm going to stay over here. You go do your thing over there with those other people. I'm going to keep myself over here. No, we want to become usable and accessible to God. And there's this reality, friends, that is our perseverance and our endurance that communicates our faith to the world around us more than the smile we put on our face when life is good. A story that I often hear people talk about in the Gospels. Doesn't matter if they're a Christian or someone who's on the fence or not really wanting anything to do with Jesus. But a story that I hear a lot of people know is a story when Jesus grabs his disciples and they get in a boat. And you already know the story I'm about to talk about because it's that familiar. And they go on the lake, and a storm comes, and the wind is howling, the waves are crashing in, and the disciples are terrified that they're going to die. They're hollering, they're screaming, we're going to die! Oh my goodness, grab the bucket, it's coming in, we're going to sink, oh my word, And then they all look at Jesus, and he's what? He's asleep. They run over, Jesus, oh my goodness, we're gonna die. And Jesus, what? He wakes up and he doesn't start wigging out either, does he? I wonder if he gets a yawn in. Like he gets up and he looks and he's like, oh, you woke me for this. Okay. And then what? He speaks. And he tells the wind to stop. He tells the waves to take a chill. And everything is calm. And there's a great sense of authority that is revealed that Jesus has in that moment. Where the disciples become afraid of him because they see that, oh my word, this man is God. And only God could do what he just did, have power over creation. But one of the reasons why that story is so memorable and so profound to all of us is because we can't believe that Jesus would be sleeping in the middle of chaos. We can't, like, what? Like, we almost, like, is that real? He was resting when there was a crisis? That he was so peaceful? You see, our children, our grandchildren, our friends, our relatives, our neighbors, and our coworkers, they will take a lot of notice when our life has been turned upside down, but there is still a great sense of peace and stability in our soul. That they will see the God who we serve and follow, not when life is great. Not when we're just chipper, we're just skipping on our way to work. No. They're not going to see God in those moments. They're going to see God in us when life is just falling apart. And we are not consumed by it. We are not taken away by it. We are not held hostage by it. But we are showing them that the strength I have told you I have in Christ, yet this is what it looks like. The peace that I have from following Jesus, yet this is what it looks like. This is not all talk. This is real. Warren Buffett said, that you find out who's skinny dipping when the tide goes out. In seasons of life, the tide goes out, and we're either standing there saying, yeah, I've told you that I'm hungry for Jesus. I told you this the whole time. Or we're standing there exposed. And they see it. They see that we're a fraud. That is why in the last year and a half, many people have kind of exited the church. They've kind of wanted to walk away from this whole Jesus stuff because the tide went out. And they realized for themselves, and others realized too, that they were just kind of going to church because they were doing a social thing. They were socially expected to go. So that's why they went. Their mom, their grandma, their friend. As a Bible Belt culture, you go to church on Sunday. And now we didn't have to, so now we're just going to do our own thing. Friends, I urge us, it's in our seasons when we are in a storm that we really show our children and grandchildren what it looks like to love Jesus and what it looks like to hold on to him. It is that way that we oftentimes can best disciple them and pass on our faith and to show them that what we have is so real. It is so real. The time I spend with Jesus in the Word and what he is planting and what's growing in here, you see it in times when life is turned upside down. And that's when they get a window into our soul. They get a glimpse into who we really are, who mom or dad really are, who grandpa and grandma really are, who aunt and uncle, you name all the relationships. They see who we really are and what is truly on the inside when the tide goes out. I love the moments of the Old Testament when we see all these different people go through seasons of hardship. And we see them wrestle with God, but yet we see them cling to him in ways that we can't even imagine. Two people stick out to me. We've talked about both of them a lot in the past. The first one is the story of Habakkuk. He is one of the Old Testament prophets. He's got a very short part of the Bible. His book is maybe 3 or 4 chapters long. It's very short. And what's beautiful about it, it's a dialogue between him and God. And I encourage you, if you're looking for something to read this week, read the book of Habakkuk. It's so short, but it is powerful. And we see how it begins. It's this letter where he says, God, what is going on? The world is in chaos. The world is in crisis. What are you doing? And we see how he says all these things to God, and then God responds to him. And it's back and forth, back and forth. And listen, he ends his book this way. He says, even though chaos is still going to abound, even though those who are coming to kill me are still coming to kill me, even though hardship is still in my path, even though all these things, I will still worship you. It's so easy to say that out loud when life is good. But here's a man who is about to have everything, and I mean, life is just terrible for him, and he still ends. I mean, he is wrestling with some deep things with God, and he just comes to a conclusion at the very end of his book. He says, yet I will still worship you. I will still love you. I will still say praises on my lips. I will still lift you and exalt you in my life. I will still honor you, my sovereign God. Because your goodness is not bound to my circumstances. No, the goodness of you, who you are, exceeds, is outside of what I may be feeling. So I'm going to worship you anyway, regardless of what life brings about for me. And in their dialogue, there's never a moment where God says, listen, I'm going to rescue you. Don't worry. The blessing is right around the corner. God just says, hold on. Endure through the hardship. Persevere. And he ends his life being deemed faithful. The other story in the Old Testament that I actually had just the other day the privilege of talking to a friend about. The other day, If you get to know me, you'll know that I'm a person who oftentimes loves to have moments to himself. Like I am naturally an introverted type of person. And so I love those moments where I'm just to myself. And the other day I came across this conversation with a stranger, and it could have been one of those 2.5-second moments. Like, hey, how you doing? Great. Have a great day. See you later. You go your way. I'll go my way. But I felt compelled by God to ask him about where he was with Jesus. So we got to talking. He was a college student, and we got to just talking through life and different things. And then I asked him, like, where would you say you are with God? That is one of my favorite questions to start a conversation about faith. Where would you say you are with God? Not where do you go to church, anything like that. Where are you with God? I grew up my whole life in church, but when I became 16 and got a car, I was gone. And I hadn't told him I was a pastor, none of that stuff. And I was like a secret agent. And for years he shared with me that he'd been really trying to go his own way and have a life way far away from God. But he just started dating a girl, and she went to church. And he said no for so many years. But actually just the day before he and I talked, his girlfriend invited him to go to a Bible study with him, and he said yes. And he went, and as he was there, all the members began just to really unpack some of the things that they were experiencing, a lot of the crisis and chaos and a lot of the hardship in their life. And he shared with me in that moment as he and I were talking, is that he could not understand how they were still holding on to Jesus. He couldn't understand it. So I don't quite get it. That, I mean, here are the people talking about abuse and all these things, this horrible stuff. And they're still trusting in Jesus. I don't get it. And so in that moment, I pulled my Bible out of his bag, and I wonder if in his mind he thought, oh goodness, here we go. And I opened my Bible and I said, have you ever heard the story of Joseph? Nah, who's Joseph? I'm like, oh, he's got a great story. His story goes from Genesis chapter 35 to chapter 50. It's powerful, you should read it. But let me give you the cliff notes. Joseph was youngest of many brothers. And his father had some sin in his heart, and his father favored him, of unrighteous favor. And what happened was all of his brothers got angry and hated him, and so they ended up actually beating him up and selling him as a slave. And they lied to their dad and told him, hey, listen, Joseph was killed. Well, Joseph was taken away, and through all this time, he's like, God, what is going on? What is next? Taken away, and he was brought as a slave to a man named Potiphar. And this Potiphar was a great leader in Egypt, and Potiphar used him in his household, and he used him rigorously, and he was worked to the bone. But for some reason, Joseph still loved God. And enough, he actually, after over time, he got some favor in Potiphar's eyes, and so Potiphar elevated him to a kind of a great role where he leaded other slaves in his household. But there came this moment where Potiphar's wife tried to take advantage of him and to be in bed with him, but he said no. And he ran away. The Bible also says that he dropped all of his stuff and he sprinted out the door. And that woman then lied. Said that he tried to take advantage of her. And so he was thrown back in jail. Many of us would have walked away from God at this point. But Joseph didn't. He continued to remain faithful, and he made some friends there in jail. And when they got out, he says, listen, don't forget about me, but they did. And years and years and years go by in a cell all to himself. Until one day, Pharaoh actually needed some help. He had a dream that needed to be interpreted, so Joseph was brought from the cell, and he interpreted the dream. God used him, even though he could have been bitter, even though he could have been filled with anger towards God. He allowed God to use him that moment, and he interpreted the dream. And what's remarkable is that he then was given a position of rulership over Egypt, of great authority. And the Bible tells us that he began to lead, and then he actually eventually got married and had a family. But that's not the end of Joseph's story. Because there comes a day when his brothers meet him again. And many of us, when we got the strength and the power, when somebody has hurt us comes and we see him again, we love to strike them down. We like to get justice and revenge. But when Joseph's brothers came back, he didn't do that. It says that he actually cried. He didn't clench his fist. He didn't grind his teeth. It says that he wept when he saw them. He could not contain his emotions. Well, he hid his identity from them, and he tried to decide what to do, and so he tried to figure out how they felt about him, and he heard that they had regretted what they had done to their brother, and it's then that he discloses who he is to them. And they are reunited again. And they celebrate, they're overjoyed, they bring their dad and their family rest back to Egypt, all these things. But that's still not the end of the story. Because one day, dad passes away, and now his brothers are terrified because the one who would have held him off is gone. And so in all their fear and trembling, they meet and talk with Joseph. And you know what Joseph says to them? He says, what you intended to harm me, God used for good. What you intended to destroy me, God built me up. What you intended to take me down, God used to elevate me. I mean, we're not talking about a week. We're talking about a lifetime of a person. And he still comes to the end of his days with a heart that is faithful to God and faithful to being who God called him to be. It is so important that as we go through seasons that are really hard, where we pray and we ask God to do something and he's not, and we're still waiting, it is so important is that we say to our enemy, listen, what you intend to take me down with, whatever you intend to divide me with, whatever you intend to ruin me with, listen, God is going to take all of this hardship. He's going to bring about this rebirth within me, and he's going to use it for his glory. I mean, that's what it means to be fully surrendered and fully usable to God. When we choose to be people who endure, when we choose, can we throw up that slide, the next one? When we choose to be people who endure, and we choose to be people who have a heart that is faithful to God in in times of trouble when he's trying to work within us and work through us. A heart that is faithful to God's work in times of trouble. And this is what it means to endure. To lean heavily into time with Jesus. I mean, morning, middle of the day, night, lean in and spend time praying and just bring our heart to him. And just saying, God, I don't know what's going on, but I trust you. I love you. Would you teach me? Would you build me? Because the season I am in is not forever. This 1 year may be hard, but the next 50 of my life, I want to honor you. I want to come to the end of my days being deemed as faithful. King Saul, in 1 Chronicles chapter 10, I think it is, when he dies, you know what it says? Is that he was unfaithful to God. It doesn't talk about anything else in his life. His memoir is that long. None of his achievements, nothing. Later in his life, as his heart becomes hard towards God, it simply says his last statement, what would have maybe been said on his tombstone, was simply that he was unfaithful to God. May we be people who are always faithful. May we be people who are hungry to endure in seasons of the life as the church, when things are not going as we expected, when people we've loved have gone and it's just us who are making new friendships and we're slowly regrowing again. Would we be people who endure? Would we be hungry, especially, listen, for the stories people write about us 10 years from now? Because the pastor of this church and the people of this church 10 years from now will be so grateful that we stuck within it. We'll be so grateful that we endured through this uncomfortable season. We'll be so grateful that we did not give up, that we held strong, that we held the wall. 10 years from now, they'll be thanking us for how we've lived today as the corner church. How we have lived as individuals and as a community. would we in every moment be remembered as faithful. Let's pray together.